Hey there, this is Tom with Tom Tech Show, and today I'm starting kind of a Windows management, Windows setup kind of series that's going to be in the technology playlist. And first thing we have to do, kind of to start it all, I think installing Windows is pretty easy. Stick the CD in, click a couple of next things, and let it install. But now we're going to set up a domain controller to get this all rolling. Here we go. Okay, so the domain controller is what helps you manage systems in a network, allows you to let users authenticate, lets you kind of control computers that are on your network, kind of control access, control policy as for what's on those computers. So this is going to be kind of a series of all that. And to get things started, we do need a domain controller. So here I have a computer. This is a server 2016. Computer, you could use 2019. They're fairly the same. One thing I do when I first set up any server, Microsoft has this list. It's a spreadsheet called Service Management. I'll put a link to it in the description of what it does. Is it shows all of the different services that are installed by default on Windows. And here it's showing what the startup type is and whether you can disable it or not. So some things like app readiness says only on data center edition, but it's set to manual and not to disable it. So here is some other things like distributed link tracking, and over here it will explain what it is and whether or not you can disable. Like geolocation services, okay to disable. Download maps manager, okay to disable. So if you have these services on your server and you try and conserve resources, you're trying to conserve memory, you don't want any rogue resources that are there trying to be vulnerable, then you need to be able to disable as many of these services as possible. So with that, I generated a PowerShell script, and now this service is just goes through, picks all the different services. Some of them I tried to put in here, but they come back as an error, so I took them out of the list. Those are the commented ones. So in this list, so anytime I set up a server, I run this PowerShell script, and boom, it disables all of the services that I don't need, right? That I don't really want. So we're going to click the run button here. I don't know if I didn't run as administrator. Yes, I did. Okay, so if I click the run button, it's going to go through, and it just comes back down here just that it was done. So it's already gone. So it's just gone through, disabled all these services, and boom, I'm done with, a little bit of the hardening part of a server is to kill all the unnecessary services. So there we go. So now we're done with that step. Now we need to go to Server Manager to set up our domain controller. So we start out with, of course, add roles and features. So we're just going to go, this is kind of a next thing. A few things we have to do first. Okay, so first, before we do that, we have to come in here, say this PC properties, and we want to name it something. So right now it's named, the default Windows name, Win1TL, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to call this ADDNS1. So it's going to be ADDNS1, Tom's Tech Show as the work group. Okay, so that's going to set it so that when we get the domain controller running, it actually has a fairly common name that we can use to reference it, because we don't want it to be Win blah 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 something else, all that garbage. We don't want it to do that. Now we have to reboot. Okay, so doing all this, like you just saw the VirtualBox come up. Doing all this in VirtualBox makes it pretty easy to do. That we can be able to set this up and make snapshots and go back and forth and be able to do this. So if you're not familiar with VirtualBox, it's free. Allows you to do virtualization on your desktop. It's a good idea to have a PC with a lot of memory in it. What are we looking at here in this studio PC, I've got 16 gigs of memory, and with everything else and that VM running, we're just floating it around just under 8 gigabytes used. So I have a lot of space. I can actually run multiple VMs, which we're going to do at some point. Okay. So now that we have the computer named correctly, and we also want to do something else, go into network settings, change adapter settings, Ethernet properties, go in here, and we want to set a fixed IP address. It's going to complain if we don't have a fixed IP address, because right now if we look at the IP address, whoops, it's this 10.2.15, and so we want it to be something that's fixed. Whenever you have a domain controller, you don't want that to be a variable IP address. We want that to be a fixed IP address. So we're going to go 10.0.2.254. We're going to put it way out at the end, and our subnet mask is going to be that 10.0.2.2 is our gateway. And now, since we're going to be setting up this as a domain controller, our preferred DNS is going to be 10.0.2.254. So it's going to be this box right here. It's going to be its own DNS server, and then that's going to forward out everything. So now that we have that set and everything else, we can click the add service, add roles and features. Okay, so next we want a role-based feature installation, and we're going to do it on this server here. That's not the right IP address. I think we're going to need to reboot since I changed the IP address. Right, it did hold. Make sure it held. Okay, so that's correct. Okay. So let's reboot just to make sure that we keep that get the IP address set. Because if it's not set, then when we go to configure it, and it's going to auto-populate DNS with our IP address and our domain controller, we want it to be able to work and put that in correctly. Okay. Now, if we come here to Server Manager, I go through this like 4 times. My brain's like 8 steps ahead typically. And yes, get done with your collecting things. Okay, so next. Now we have our correct IP address, 2.254. We're going to select this server, our AD DNS1. Okay, so we're going to add Active Directory domain services, and then it's going to want to add all these other tools, which we're right now just going to say add those features, which is fine. So we don't really need this box has a DHCP server built into it. VirtualBox does. So I do want to add DNS, and I think I'm going to add DHCP just so that I can have this box in the future hand out DHCP. So let's go next. And I think we're done with features here. It's already added all the remote administration tools and everything else. Next. And we're going to click next, and then again another next and next. So we're going to get down here. It says restart if you want. Okay, that's fine. And we're going to hit install. So now we're installing all of these things. Now it used to be way back when, once you get this installed, that, and it still is, that you don't actually have Active Directory running yet. This is just installing all of the components that are necessary to run Active Directory. So after that, in the past, you would have to go to a command line and type DC promo, and then it would promote that box to a domain controller. Well, now they have a link in this management tool that allows you to just click a link and it runs that. If you try and run DC promo from a command line, it says, you don't do this here anymore. You do this from Server Manager now. So they're trying to make things a little bit easier to get into this interface and be able to run things and set things up a bit quicker and easier for people who are, either setting this up for the first time, or you're setting it up and you want to go logically to the next step, and that might not be open a command line and run DC promo. That it's going to be just click the link and then it's going to do that. Okay, we're still in installation has started, so we're going to do a little pause here, and then we'll come back once everything gets set up and ready to go for the next step. Hold on. Okay, now we're back to the point where it's done. So here we, instead of, like I said, instead of having to go type DC promo at the command line, there's this little link here that says promote this server to domain controller, and that's what we want to click. Okay, so we have different options here. Add domain controller to an existing domain. So if you already had a domain set up, that's what you would use. Add a new domain to existing forest. So if you had a forest for your enterprise and you're setting up a new location and you want to set up, like, remote office 1 at your domain, then that's what we would do. But right now we're going to add a new forest, and we're going to be tomstechshow.net. This is actually not a valid domain out on the internet. Maybe I'll put .com just because make it valid. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then boom, we're going to start moving forward. Okay, so here we can select a different domain functional level here from 2008 R2, 212 R2, all the way up to 2016. If we had a 2019 server that we're working on, then 2019 would be there. So if I move this down to 2008, then I have the options for the domain functional level to be 2008. But we're going to go all the way to 2016. And then we do want the domain controller. We do want the global catalog for everything. And then we're going to put in a super secret password. This is a very short password, which I do not recommend. You need some for your administrative domain control. Administrator password needs to be super huge and long, which we will be changing it at some point. Okay, so we need to create. Okay, so delegation for this DNS server cannot be created, but the authenticated parent zone cannot be found because this is the first one. So we're going to say okay. So now it's going to generate a NetBIOS name that's going to be used. So remember way back when the other older systems, Windows for Workgroups, it had this NetBIOS name that would be publicized out on the network. That's basically, it's the domain name that you selected / the dot whatever on the end that you put. So you can make another, add it, make it different if you wanted, but I usually just leave it the same. Okay. Now paths, we're just going to select the same paths. If you want to move this to maybe a second volume and separate it from the C drive, if you're having logs or something stored on the C drive and the C drive runs out of, your domain databases and everything get huge, if you have a huge network and they run you out of disk space and it's on the C drive, your system's going to halt. With it on if you put it on a second drive, a D drive, E drive, some other drive, then if that drive gets full, the operating system will still boot. But for right now, we're going to keep them on the C drive. So these are all our options. We can view it as a script. Okay, it's going to do some prerequisites here in our check. Okay, we're at the end of we got our prerequisites here. There's Windows, some little warnings. Windows 2016 domain controllers have a default for the security named all cryptography algorithms compatible with Windows NT 4 that prevents weaker cryptography algorithms. So you can click that. You would like to be able to click that link, but of course, since it's Microsoft, you can't click that link. The delegation DNS can't be created because there isn't one yet, which is fine. So now we can just click install, and it's going to run through the installation. So we'll pause for a second and be right back. Okay, here we go. We're at the point it's asking me the computer being restarted because Active Directory main services was installed or removed. So we did install it. So we're going to close. Okay, it's rebooting now. And it's going to start. Okay, we're back here. We've got the server up here now. We're going to enter our password. Expired, it must be changed. Okay, so that's the old password. We're going to do the new password. There we go. So first time it comes in. So now we're going to log in as administrator. Oops. Holy cow. There we go. Now we should have all of our domain tools and everything else all set, ready to go. So we have all of these new Windows administrative tools, which is I'm going to pin some of these to the start: Active Directory user and computers, DHCP, DNS, all of these things. So first thing I want to do here, come into the DNS, and we have the different zones, and I'm going to click properties, and I'm going to come here to click forwarders, and I'm going to edit my forwarders, and I'm going to add that. I'm going to add Google to the forwarders. So then now we should be able to get internet if I did everything correctly. And yes, we do. We do have internet. And since we have DNS set, then we should be able to look up things, do Windows updates, and all of that. But we also have, so our users, we have the tomstechshow.com domain, and under domain controllers we have our ADDNS. So this is why it's very important that you rename that before you put it in here. Otherwise this ADDNS will be win blah 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 junk. And in our DNS server under here we also have, under forward lookup zones, Tom's Tech Show, there will be ADNS with our IP address in there, which is fixed because there's a lot of different things that are in here that connect and use that IP address all over the place to set up all the domain controllers and everything else. So all that is right there. So we're good to go. I've logged in. So now we have a fully running and operational domain controller. And now that I've gone to the DNS, we see down here in where the little network is, it used to have a little alert triangle saying it couldn't reach the internet. Now that I've put that forwarding into my DNS server, it's now connected to the internet and can look up stuff. So there we go. Okay, so that's kind of all the steps to get the domain controller up and running. We're going to do some more things in the next video about adding users and looking at the kind of the LDAP kind of version of what that looks like and connecting it with LDAP and things like that. All right. So thanks for watching this. If you have any questions about what I did, how I set it up, or anything that you do differently, then let me know, and we'll try and have a discussion about it, and maybe you can show me some things that you do that I don't, that maybe are even better than I do. All right. Thanks for watching this one. Take care.